Hi guys, my name's Chris. Welcome back to Train to Summit. Today is the fifth part in my training guide aimed to help beginner mountaineers. Today's focus is going to be on developing strength in the fundamental movement patterns. Simply put, the fundamental movement patterns are those movements that you do on a daily basis, like sitting down in a chair, hinging at the hip to pick something up, pushing a door open, or even carrying groceries. Specifically, the movements found in these patterns are squat, hinge, lunge, push, both horizontal and vertical, pull, both horizontal and vertical, and carry. Today's video is going to focus on giving you an exercise for every fundamental movement pattern so that you can find the right exercise for you and your goal. I also want to emphasize that while everyone should strive to get strong in these movement patterns, not every exercise that's used to train through these patterns is going to be right for everyone. Think about exercises like tools in your toolbox. Choose the right one for the right job, depending on your body proportions, your goal, your history of injury, etc. Our first fundamental movement pattern is going to be the squat. The squat mainly trains your quads, glutes, hamstrings, and your lower back muscles. I always like to have the goblet squat in my training program. It's also very convenient because you only have to use a dumbbell for it and doesn't require any space. It's also quite good even for a beginner level. The second exercise we're going to talk about is going to be a heel elevated goblet squat. This requires you to place a couple of plates underneath your heels, and when performing the exercise it ensures that your torso is a little bit more upright, which just means it's going to focus on developing your quads more but emphasizes the hip and the lower back a little bit less. Next we have a box squat. This is a hip dominant movement and it's very helpful in case you're dealing with any sort of knee pain. It emphasizes working more the muscles of the hip and puts a lot less strain on the knee joint. And finally we have the back barbell squat. This would be the most specific exercise for mountaineering since you're holding the weight on your back, similar to you carrying a backpack. It's also a great option because you can add a lot of weight to this and increase the resistance while not having to fatigue your arms because you're holding the weight in front of your body. Next up we have the hinge pattern. This mainly is going to focus on training your hamstrings, glutes, but also your lower back muscles. Think about your deadlifts and your Romanian deadlifts. Those are the main movements that you're gonna do in this pattern. First exercise we're talking about is the dumbbell Romanian deadlift. Again, this has great convenience because you can do it from anywhere and all you need is a set of dumbbells. It's great for training your hamstrings just because you're maintaining that time under tension while you're performing the exercise. Next we have one of my favorites, resistance band hinges. This is a great exercise for teaching someone how to hinge. Mainly because the band pulls you in the direction of where your hip needs to move without you having to think too much about it. Our next two deadlift options are great in case you're working out of any sort of lower back pain. The first one is a trap bar deadlift. This one puts a bit more emphasis on training your quads as well, and it keeps your torso a bit more upright, which puts a bit less strain on your lower back. It's also great for adding a bit more weight down the line on the bar. Following this we have the sumo barbell deadlift, which again puts a little bit less strain on your lower back, but also emphasizes on training your inner thighs and your quads a little bit more. Next up we have our push pattern. Mainly our vertical push, which is overhead pressing. Quick note with this one, in case you have trouble getting into that overhead position, right? Try to release your lats and your triceps. Is going to help lift the arm a bit cleaner overhead, but also work on thoracic mobility. Go back to the second part of this video and I have a few drills and exercises that can help you do that. The vertical push focuses on developing strength in your deltoid muscles, so your shoulders, but also your triceps, your upper traps, and a little bit of the upper chest as well. Our first exercise is going to be a standing dumbbell shoulder press. Again, this is great for convenience because you can do it from the comfort of your own home. It's also a bit more easy to get with the dumbbells in a better position as you're pressing overhead rather than doing it with the barbell. The barbell military press is a great exercise for developing a little bit more strength, and because you're holding one solid object, you're a bit more stable as you're pressing it. But I would say the con of that is if you're lacking any sort of shoulder or thoracic mobility, it's a lot harder to get to the barbell and that clean pressing position that you need. And lastly, we have the kneeling dumbbell overhead press. This is great for all of those mobility restrictions that I was talking about before, mainly because you're focusing on one arm at a time and it's a bit easier to get into that overhead position. We then have our horizontal push pattern. This mainly works on your chest muscles, but also focuses a little bit on the shoulder and the triceps. Our first exercise is going to be a push-up. This is a great exercise not only for developing strength in the chest, tricep and shoulders, but it also teaches you that control and mobility into your shoulder blades. Following this, we have incline push-ups, which is a great exercise to start building strength in case you're not yet able to go into that full push-up position. Finally, we have the barbell bench press, which is a super iconic chest exercise. I like this for developing higher levels of strength because you have that room to put a lot more weight on the barbell. I would say a downside of this is that your back is stuck against the bench and it creates a lot of friction, and having that friction doesn't allow your shoulder to move too well and it can cause a bit of impingement into the shoulder joint over time. Next, we're going to talk about the vertical pull pattern. This is going to mainly work on training your lats, biceps and traps. The staple for this movement pattern is going to be the pull-up. It's a great exercise for developing strength in all of the muscle groups mentioned before, but also develops control into your core. It's great to strive to be able to do this exercise. It also has a very great transfer into climbing or scrambling. Two great exercises that can help you get to doing pull-ups are, firstly, resistance band assisted pull-ups. This is great because it takes a little bit out of your own body weight and makes you a bit lighter while you're performing the pull-up, but also keeps you in the full pull-up position, which just trains you on how you're meant to keep your body while you're training to be able to do pull-ups. And lastly, we have resistance band lat pull downs, which again is a great option to build the strength up so you can be able to eventually do pull-ups, but it's also a great exercise to strengthen the lats by itself. Following this, we have the horizontal pull pattern. This again works your lats, biceps, traps, but also engages a little bit more the rhomboid muscles, which are the muscles that pull your shoulder blades together. We first have the barbell or the dumbbell bent over row. Both great exercises for developing strength in this movement pattern. I would just say make sure you nail the hinge, the hip hinge, before you get into this movement, because it's very easy to put a lot of strain on your lower back instead of keeping all of the attention on the glutes and the lats while you're performing the exercise. Next, we have suspension trainer rows. So for this, you can use, let's say, a TRX, Olympic rings, or you can even set the barbell so you do an inverted row. This is great for putting you firstly in a different position when you're performing the exercise, which adds a different stimulus, but it also focuses a lot more on you being able to keep your body in the right position, and it also strengthens your forearms to a bigger extent. And finally, we have the standing resistance band row, which is a great option if you're a beginner, just because it keeps you in that more familiar upright position, and it's a bit easier to perform and get more familiar with the exercise as well. Following this, we have the carry movement pattern. This is going to strengthen mainly our traps and our forearms, but also our biceps as well. It's a very important movement pattern because it teaches you how to move and stabilize the core while moving under weight, which, as you know, is very important for mountaineering since you're always going to carry weight on your back. The dumbbell farmer carry is a great exercise, again, mainly because you have all of that convenience of being able to do it even from the comfort of your own home, and only requires a set of dumbbells. If you have access to a trap bar in your gym, I encourage you to try the trap bar deadlift, just because you can load a little bit more weight on this exercise. And finally, we have the lunge movement pattern, which again trains our quads, glutes and hamstrings, but it's also a great stability exercise to teach you control while moving or stepping while carrying weight. Our first exercise for this is going to be a barbell walking lunge, which is a great exercise again for transfer into mountaineering because you're carrying the weight on your back, and you can easily add a little bit more weight to this without fatiguing your arms. Following this, we have a dumbbell walking lunge, which is essentially the same exercise, only you're holding the weight. Again, great for convenience because you can do it pretty much from anywhere as long as you have a bit of space and a pair of dumbbells. This would also help train a bit more your forearm flexors and also your trap muscles. Two ways of making these exercises a little bit easier for you are to take a step in the middle of each rep when you're doing the walking lunge, just to get your balance before you step into the next one. And the other exercise would be a reverse lunge, which again gives you a little bit more control since it's more of a static exercise, but trains the same movement pattern and helps you transition finally into the full walking lunge. And just as a final note, make sure that you invest some time and knowledge and maybe get some experienced help to teach you how to move through these exercises correctly.